Them talk if they want to. Talk don't bother me. I want the whole wide world to know that I love you.
And welcome to Let Them Talk. I'm Paul DeRienzo.
And I'm Miss Joan Marie Musi.
And hope everyone's having a great new year. We haven't seen you since last year. This is our first visit together in 2007. And we're really happy to be here back on M&N and with Let Them Talk. And our guest, Chris Neidl, who is with a group called Solar1. And it has a lot to do with the photograph, the beautiful spring photograph, almost like the weather we've been having all over the world.
Doesn't quite look like that right now.
No, and we're going to talk about the photograph, the location of the photograph behind us, which is a beautiful new park on the Lower East Side of Manhattan that is also the site of the Solar1 project, which we'll be hearing more about from Chris. As you can see, we're live today. Our phone number is here on the screen, 212-757-1538.
So call us up.
Yeah, call us up. We'll be here to take your calls. And let's begin by describing the site behind us, the photograph behind us.
And saying welcome, Chris.
Welcome,
Thanks
Chris.
for coming.
Pleasure to be here.
And it just place us is this park on the Lower East Side. What's the park called? Stuyvesant Cove Park. It's a new park, right? One of the
relatively
newest
new. Yeah, it was began in 2001. Was completed in early 2002.
And what is your link to a city park? What is
It's actually not a Parks Department park. It's EDC property that was.
What's the EDC?
The Economic Development Commission of New York, and they own property, all over the city. And it used to be a completely derelict strip there, basically a dumping ground, and all sorts of people hanging out there, and junkies and whatnot. And it wasn't the kind of place you'd want to go spend and use like a park. And its story is actually quite fascinating how it did become a park. It was originally, from the early 80s on, it was a plan to build a large high-rise, a private high-rise called Riverwalk, and a group of citizens, people living in the Stuyvesant town area, resisted that. It was kind of a done deal, actually, but they kept pushing and pushing and pushing and agitating, and then finally it actually got pulled off the table by Dinkins. And part of the reason why they had that victory, they sort of protested partially under the banner of the sort of environmental impact that would happen at sort of
another large building blocking the view of the
view was a big part of it for sure, but it was also an overstressed sewage treatment and things like that. So they decided that they wanted it to have some environmental content or thrust to it. So it's an all-native plant park.
Right. Describe the park is fascinating. We want to talk about Solar1 and your role in that and the projects you're working on. Just want to describe the setting better because it's just a beautiful setting. It's underneath the East River Drive, and as you said, it's an area where it was pretty much desolate. There was maybe encampments of people there. It was formerly an industrial area in past decades. And now when you walk through it, it's a beautiful winding path. And tell us a little bit about what kind of environment has been constructed in this park.
Yeah, again, just to reinforce, one of the really interesting things about it is it actually is technically a brownfield area because there was a lot of industrial uses there. There was
that means
breweries and concrete. So it's an interesting conversion of a property that was very blighted, and now it is again the site of a native plant park. So it's about almost 2 acres. It stretches from around 23rd Street to 18th Street. Sort of winds along. It's a park that was designed by Donna Wallcabbage, who also has done a lot of waterfront park design in the metropolitan area.
And there's a lot of seating in that park. It's not just a promenade along the river. There's little places to...
People really utilize it. One of the things is it's really a sort of a nicely kept secret. It is right along it's on the Greenway. There's a bike path there, but during the warmer months, people eat dinner out there, as the sun is going down.
And we watched a movie.
Yeah, well, you can talk about that.
Right. And we're going to be moving on to that. Now, one of the, at the northern end of the park is an interesting structure. And here's where we saw the movie, for example, Darwin's Nightmare, and we had Nick Flynn on in the summer around that time talking about his movie. He was involved in the making
of that movie. And we've had Hubert on many times.
Yeah, Hubert Salper. But so we went there to see the movie and saw this beautiful setup in this building, the Solar1. What is Solar1? What is that building? What's the I've read a little bit about it, but I want you to describe it for us. What is Solar1?
Solar1 is both the name of our building and also now our organization. We actually rebranded last year and named ourselves after our building because it was catchy and sort of described what we did. But the building itself has been there since 2003, but that's not its original site. It was actually constructed for Earth Day in 2000 as a demonstration building by the architects Kiss and Cathcart.
In the same location?
No, actually down in Battery Park.
Oh,
so one of the things that's interesting about it is it's very modular. It can be taken apart, relocated. So we hope that when we actually construct our larger project, which we can talk about later, Solar2 is what the project is called right now, that building will be able to be defabricated, moved on to some other pasture, and serve as an environmental center there as well.
Now, this building is designed to be environmentally friendly, beyond environmentally friendly, to have a very little, I guess, impact on the carbon cycle. How is that? How do you do that? How do you achieve that with this structure? How big is it?
It's a very small,
it's not large.
True to New York scale, 500 square foot box, basically.
And how many people worked in there?
It's like a clown car, we sort of think. It's, between anywhere from, we have 6 regular staff now, which has grown a lot. We've added 3 since I got there 2 years ago. Right. But then we have at any point during the year volunteers and interns, so we really pack it in there.
All right. But tell us, there's all aspects of the design, from the roof, the overhang, the windows, how the toilets work. Tell us a little bit about how this building minimizes its impact, the technologies it uses, and how we can use that as renters, as people living in New York City. How reasonable is that?
Well, the actual building itself is a difficult thing to sort of duplicate as a renter, but just to divide its features sort of in 2. We can talk about its energy components, and then also its materials components. So, and the building is designed to conserve as much energy as possible. It's a very highly efficient building because the walls themselves are actually built out of something called structurally insulated panels, or SIPs, which are basically like a sandwich of styrofoam and wood, and has a really, really high insulation value. We also, as our name suggests, we're partially solar powered as well. The top of our roof has a almost 3 kilowatts worth of capacity of solar power. And we also have a little battery backup system where we can store some of that solar and actually use it when the sun goes down, which is not a common application in the city. Usually we'd be connected to the grid and you'd sort of just trade back and forth.
I see. In other words, by connecting to the grid and trade back and forth, you mean that actually when you take in through your solar panels more electricity than you're using, you actually sell it, you're actually giving into the, you can plug, you're sending electricity back down the line.
It's called net metering, and most states now actually have that legislated. New York is one of them. Nonprofits can't do that, actually. It's only in New York. It's only residential properties. In other states, some states in New Jersey, for instance, it can be commercial and industrial as well. California has very, very aggressive solar incentives. But yeah, that's the idea there. Is that you're connected.
Well, when we saw the movie there, was that solar powered? Like, did they run the projector from solar?
That one. The audio and lighting for that, we were a little worried that for our small little system, and particularly the batteries, that it might conk out in the middle. So we didn't want to take our chances on that. But a lot of our events that we host are solar powered, that require electricity.
And at night it would be off for the batteries, since instead of giving the electricity to Con Ed, now you charge up your batteries and use that at night.
Yeah, it depends on the time of the year, how much we're actually able to get in. We have to definitely, in the whole solar sort of components, the weakest link or the most problematic thing is our batteries. That's why usually in an urban environment you just plug into the grid. We have that for demonstration purposes, so you have to service your batteries every once in a while, depending on how their health is, how much they can actually store.
What type of batteries do you use?
Basic car batteries.
Car
batteries.
Use
forklift batteries, depending on the size of the system.
Interesting. Tell us a little bit more. How about I was reading on your website a waterless urinal.
Yeah.
How does that work?
That's part of most of the things we use in the building are designed to use low energy or low water. So basically it's as it sounds. It's a waterless urinal, which sounds gross, but that actually what it uses is a is a disc that has an aromatic oil, which would float actually on top of the urine. So when it goes down, it actually covers it up, and urine breaks down actually quite quickly. So it's not a problem at all, and you don't use any
Wow,
water.
that's interesting.
Yeah.
Is that a commercially available?
It is. Yeah, you can. There's actually a funny story. I think it was in Philadelphia where the plumbers union was resisting it getting the code because it would take away some of the usefulness. And then we also have a low flush toilet as well,
right,
which is great. But other parts about the building as well. We have the solar panels up there, but just flapping solar panels obviously doesn't make a green building. So we have what are called passive solar applications too. So all of our windows, our major windows actually, are facing south, so we can get the maximum amount of daylight rather than flicking on our lights. During the day, it also can help us with our heating. As you saw, there's that, when you're at the property, there's that awning that hangs over.
Right.
And that awning is what prevents sunlight from getting in when you don't want it to get in there, when the sun is high in the sky during the summer months. But it's just over when the sun is just over the horizon during the winter, where you want to get the maximum amount of gain, you can. So that's based on building practices that have been around for millennia.
So what's your electric bill on the building compared to what it would be? Have you figured it out? Have you ever figured that out?
Luckily, I don't pay the bills, but it is funny. We actually had a guy who came, who was a kind of a meter reader, and because of our status, we don't get metered very regularly over long periods. And he'd come and he was like, well, why is it so low? You know what I mean? And he pointed up to the roof.
He couldn't understand why you're using it.
He didn't know because he came through the north side, so we kind of had to laugh about that. So it's a good chunk, particularly during, But even one of the sort of ideas that people have to get used to is it's great. Solar can, it's great if you can get all of your energy.
Sorry about that.
Well, now we know that you have a film festival, and I know because I take dance classes from Tamara Rogoff that she runs a dance festival also. Now, what other kind of programs do you have? Do you have educational programs for school students, or?
Yeah, we do. We have a full-time educator at Solar1 who goes out to schools, and also we host schools as well. And our curriculum focuses mostly on energy, renewables, efficiency, fossil fuel use, etc. But we also have an estuary program as well, being run in the river. We have some oyster traps right now, and water testing we also do with groups as well. And they're also adding, our educator and our park manager, Melissa McDonald, are coming up with a curriculum that specifically focuses on the park, the plants, and that's pretty exciting. They're actually just working on that today, so it'll debut in the springtime.
Let's talk about your next project, Solar2. That's a lot more of a ambitious project. What is that going to be?
That would be and again, this is when our organization came in there and sort of got the job of doing environmental education. One of the responsibilities that we had, in addition to managing the park and running environmental education program, was raising resources for a much larger environmental education center. And that is what the project we're calling Solar2, which will get a different name once it's actually in construction. But that would be a 10,000 square foot building that would actually be a sort of in an elite class of green buildings. It would be a net energy zero building, so it would actually produce more clean energy than it used. So
now, will that be on the same site?
It would be on the exact same site, but it would be obviously much larger. So it would go sort of, you've been there before, the middle of the blacktop area back to, it's an oblong building, back to the gas station. It'd be 2 floors.
Oh, wow.
But it'd have a lot of other, it could be a very large solar array, as they call about 70 kilowatts, geothermal wells as well.
Where would the geothermal well go to?
They just bury it. They dig right just down into the
right here in New York. And there's enough of a temperature difference.
Yep, that's exactly what it is. Wow. It's a constant temperature down there, so it can modify the temperature on the surface. And that would, kind of in a way, sort of allow us to sort of enlarge and make more sophisticated our programs now. We already have a sort of a basic sort of menu of programs that we do. We have a lecture series, we do classes there, we do arts programming.
How do folks sign up for the classes?
Well, the in-school stuff, it's just our educator does a lot of outreach, and then word of mouth. And then the other stuff
with
that
the school system, and they come and they bring the classes.
They bring the classes there if we can fit them in, or we also will travel as well.
I see.
We're able to do that. So we just want to reach as many people as possible. But the other thing, like the Green Renter that we do on Monday
tell us
nights,
about that.
it's a small lecture series we've been doing since last October, so about a year and a half almost. That each week we have a different expert speaker coming in and talking about a different environmental subject that's pertinent to New York living. So, and it's not just about, as you might sort of guess from the title, it's not just about what you can do in your own apartment, but we look at renter more as a sort of a category of existing in cities, where you're not just renting out and borrowing somebody else's space to live in, but also your transportation. So that living in a city and trying to be green in a way presents some challenges, but it also has some built-in advantages. So, but a lot of our subjects could be anything from worm composting to yesterday we actually had a solar expert who came in and talked about sort of on a large scale, how realistic is solar for New York? What could it sort of potentially do? In that activity, just
Well, but it's interesting what we're talking about here is the educational role and how folks, let's talk about how renters in New York City, let's say Manhattan or Queens or Brooklyn, can
live the green life.
Live a green life. What should they do? What should the first step they should take?
Well, certainly, one thing I should say just as a baseline is that New Yorkers actually, just by dint of being New Yorkers, actually tread a little bit more lightly on the earth than most Americans, certainly more so than what most Americans would probably think. We sort of have a vision in our head of some sort of...
Well, most of us don't have cars, but...
Exactly. Only 20% of us do, in fact, actually, and that's obviously a major contributor to people's footprints. And also the density of our housing structure means that some waste, the waste heat that's escaping from your apartment is probably winding up, in your neighbor Joe's apartment rather than just in the ether.
So, I always thought that. So if somebody's air conditioning their apartment on the top floor, it sort of insulates the people below them.
Yeah, there's a lot of little accidental sort of advantages like that. But on top of that, there's numerous different areas that you can break it up into. And again, the Green Renter, we do a lot of stuff that's about what you can do sort of in your lifestyle changes. And then we also focus on political stuff as well. So you have to obviously be
so like recycling.
Well, let's
recycling is an obvious one.
Do you work on recycling, and can you tell us what's going on with that?
I don't directly. Well, right now what they just actually there's some new things coming out. One, I guess I don't think it's been publicly announced. I should probably keep it to myself. But there's an exciting bit of news that's coming out. But there is also, there was recently the passage of a bill in City Council that expanded the numbers of plastic, actually, on the bottom of every plastic item. Just been,
that they're going to recycle.
That's 1 through 5 can actually recycle.
And folks, they're increasing the numbers.
They increase the numbers so that a greater portion of our plastic waste stream can now be recycled. Another major thing, one of the big impacts of waste handling in New York had been that trash had been shipped by diesel trucks, and where a lot of times the neighborhoods that they would go through that were near the expressways and
or just Canal Street, it's just a midnight freeway.
It's Canal Street. Exactly. A lot of those people, exactly, they're not using Manhattan, they're only using it as a way of getting from A to B, which is basically from the outer boroughs to Jersey. So that was a major problem. So there was legislation that was just passed this last summer that's going to reinstate the waterborne ferry system of moving.
They're going back to that. Although we had the problem, I remember doing stories, the problem of the medical waste that was washing up because they were just dumping stuff into.
Well, that's a whole other problem. Ocean disposal is not part of the plan. This is just getting it again to another landfill, which is not going to be in New York.
I'll tell you what I'm heading at. Yesterday, everybody in New York was complaining about a weird smell, mysterious odor.
Did they figure out what that was, actually?
No, but it's not dangerous.
Don't worry, we don't know what it is, but it's not dangerous.
It was
where it's coming from.
Yes, and they were claiming that it was coming from New Jersey, and
it originates
the politicians in New Jersey were saying that you guys in New York always say that about us.
Yeah.
And so who knows? I mean, and they were saying it smelled like mercaptan, which is the scent that they use in natural gas.
Natural gas, so you can smell it.
Right, but that is also the scent of sulfur, and hydrogen sulfide, sulfuric acid. So they're not telling everybody there's a lot of different chemicals that make that smell.
Possibilities.
That's right. They add that chemical to natural gas so that you will smell it.
Right. Right, so I know it's powerful. I remember when I was in college, we at the University of Wisconsin, we had a giant chemistry building, 10-story building, 1,000 students. They really had a big chemistry department. And I had to take, it was not my major, but I had to go and take a chemistry class. So on my way to class, I come up the hill, and there's thousands of people outside of the building all over the campus, and the building's been evacuated, and the fire department, the police department,
Because of a
there.
mysterious odor?
Yeah, no, somebody they thought it was a huge gas leak. Somebody had actually broken a 5-gallon bottle of mercaptan on the top floor of the building, and it made the entire area for like a square kilometer around smell like somebody had just, pierced a tank of natural
But at
gas.
least they could find the source.
Yeah. Eventually they found it, but at first their first reaction was that it was a gas leak, and they were getting everybody out of there, And so that's why I thought about it, because I remember that story that everybody's saying, well, it smells like this scent, which is a very potent smell that was developed for scenting natural gas. But again, who knows? But is New York improving, or is our air quality? And is that any of your expertise? You guys do
our air quality
What is the air quality?
Just last year the sort of was dubiously awarded the worst. Air quality in the country, actually.
Really?
Even worse than Los Angeles. So
worse than Los Angeles.
We have, a lot of most days. We have non-attainment, as they say, is that we don't satisfy the EPA standards.
Most days of the year.
Yeah. Well, particularly during the summertime, it can be really bad. But we certainly over the long period of time, we've improved our air quality. The type of most diesel vehicles now are much cleaner. Certainly city vehicles now are much cleaner, but also the power plants, we burn, the cleaner fuels, natural gas, and then some diesel as well, but we're not burning coal, which
so nobody should be surprised if they smell something like that. I mean, it's there every day. They just smelled it yesterday because there was a temperature inversion and it just held it close to the ground.
I don't know if that's the case. I mean, I would think that if it made, certainly it's been strange weather, but I did briefly read an article. I didn't see that anybody giving that reason. So my guess is something was leaking from somewhere, but I don't have any.
And nobody wants to admit it, right?
Yeah, but I mean,
this happens. The point being, this happens a lot, and our air quality has a long way to go,
and
we just discovered it.
And our guest is Chris Neidl, and would you like to give out your website at Solar1?
Yeah, it's Solar1, the number 1, not the word, .org. And listed there, we have all of our events that are coming up. As I mentioned before, we have our Monday night lecture series, The Green Renter. We don't have it this coming week. We do it 3 weeks out of the month. Next one's actually about buying wind power for your apartment, which is one thing that people can do in New York. If they
That's interesting. And
it is interesting.
Again, we'll give it a shot. Hi, you're on.
Hello?
Yeah, I wanted to talk about a situation that recently arose on my brownstone.
Oh, God. How are you? You on?
Hello?
Yes,
Hello?
go ahead.
Yeah, the guy in the brown suit, you should give the jacket to him.
Oh, well, we just are attracting
Fashion
the
comments.
fashion guys now. All right,
Fashion comments.
well, we have a couple of minutes left.
She was being sincere there.
Yes, right.
At least she had an idea.
Right, she had an idea, right? It was a she. I want to talk about wind for the last couple of minutes. That's interesting. Again, this is I've seen
Yeah, can you put a tiny windmill
designs for
apartment?
these
Well, that's not
windmills.
Well, there is micro wind.
Yeah, I've seen that.
There's an interesting thing that was at Wired's Next Fest that is specifically built for urban applications. So there's a couple of those, but when we're talking about buying wind for your apartment, it's not about installing a small microturbine, which is very site-specific.
Right.
I like
It's
that.
exciting.
A couple of them in
Yeah.
the cities, and actually an early design for the Freedom Tower would have had several of the top floors basically be a cage for wind turbines.
Oh,
It's
wow.
an interesting idea.
And they're not like this anymore. Now they're in a
No.
they're inside.
Well, some are that way.
Yeah.
There's vertical and horizontal access, but the majority of wind capacity has turbines.
the ones that are going all over the country, the large-scale ones.
Even the small ones are mostly identifiable.
Well, we've seen them everywhere. Now, everywhere you go, anywhere in the world where it's windy, you see these things popping up. And because they must work. They're very efficient.
Well, it depends on where. They definitely, here in this country, we have amazing capacity for wind in the middle parts of the country, not too far away from where you went to school, where I almost went to school. But west of there, in the Dakotas and Oklahoma as well.
Sure. Of
has
course,
an
there's
enormous
always
amount.
somebody who's got to bring up a negative to anything.
There are negatives to everything. That's
Right.
that's a mature way to look at things.
And
just,
that
measuring that.
Some people
balance.
now are complaining they don't want to see these big
Yeah.
things turning.
Oh, the
I think they're
appearance.
beautiful,
Right.
personally.
Yeah.
They don't bother me, but some
That's
people are absolutely.
Yeah, there's a Rorschach effect with those
Yeah,
things.
yeah.
If you're into this kind of stuff and you see them, you almost are looking at it like it's some kind of benevolent, you
Right,
know,
just a
giant or
sculpture, a
something,
beautiful
but
sculpture.
I love them. I've seen
Yeah,
them in several
yeah.
different places, but some people, you know, when they bought, you know, their vacation home in central New York near the Finger Lakes, they didn't buy it so that they could wake up and see a
windmill,
you know, a windmill,
giant
which is
windmill.
unfortunate. But and
Yeah.
the really sad, tragic case is what happened with Cape Cod. That there was going to be the largest offshore, you know, wind project in the country. It would have provided enough electricity for about 3/4 of Cape Cod, but it was resisted by the people that live around there. Ironically enough, by Robert Kennedy Jr., who's actually a very well-known environmentalist. And it was just, to a lot of us, it was just sort of a case of NIMBYism, and
Not in my backyard.
it's really an unfortunate turn of events.
For our last 15 seconds, or last minute, I guess, we have 1 minute to go, give you a chance to sum up exactly what Solar1 is trying to do and how folks can interact with you, the people who are watching right now.
Well, they can easily go to our website, which I mentioned before. My name's, again, Chris Neidl. I'm listed there. You can find me. You can call us up as well. Our number is listed there. And we're always, you
And
know,
that's Solar1, like the number.
Solar the number one
Right, .org.
And particularly during the warmer months when we have our film fest, we have City Soul, which I didn't get to talk about, which is a 4-part music series with art installations, and they're very sort of labor intensive, and we always need volunteers. So,
And the
anytime
movies are
someone wants
really
to help
fun.
Yeah,
out,
the movies, the environmental movies.
we're in the process of selecting our movies for the 2007 season right now. But get in touch with us, and we can definitely plug you in. One good way to do that is to come by the Green Wrench on a Monday night, and those again are
Okay.
And all the events are free.
Right.
everything is free. That's
Right, and the park, Stuyvesant Cove Park, is at the entrance is at 23rd Street,
Yep.
between 23rd and 18th Street on the east side, right on the river. It's a beautiful spot. You can see the photograph behind us. That's actually the view from the park
It
looking
is a
out.
beautiful, beautiful.
And it's just a
Lucky
gorgeous
look.
location. So thank you very much. We'll see you next week. And it's been Let Them Talk. Paul DeRienzo, Miss Joan Marie Musi, and we'll see you